A couple of days ago, I was checking my Twitter messages. I don't get a lot of them, so I don't really check it all too often. And I had one request for a message from someone I didn't even know, and the name on the account was an Outlook email address, so whatever. The person had made their account May 20th, and they sent me this roughly on that day. And the message read, "Have you seen Teia Rabishu's signature on Sally?" And of course I said, no, I haven't even been paying attention to it. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the Jeremy Hambley issue is done and dead. He's been banned. He's never going to be unbanned, barring some massive overhaul of DCI and a massive change in leadership going forward in WotC, which I just don't see happening. But I was interested, I was intrigued, and I went over there. Here is Teia Rabishu's most recent post. And her signature reads, "Remember this article? MTG Salvation doesn't want you to, because I originally didn't want to write it, specifically because I knew what problems it would cause. But the admins ordered me to, and it was given a full pass by no fewer than editor Kaburi, who rewrote an entire section and did a full editorial pass on the rest, and self-styled editor-in-chief Fade Ruin, who highlighted what needed to be softened, and which subsequently was. Then the admin stabbed me in the back by lying to Curse and saying the entire thing was 100% my doing, my fault, with no one else involved having any responsibility, setting in motion a chain of events that led to my complete dismissal by Curse, with not one word uttered in my defense by the admins in either instance, simply for wanting to do my job and insisting on better editorial standards in the future. This is what passes for leadership on this site. No transparency, no consistency, no accountability. Just thought everyone should know." Well, the link leads to this article. If you can't take criticism of Jeremy Hambley, you're part of the problem. Now, previously I did a video on this. The video was entitled "When SJWs Moderate," and I went into a little bit of the history of Teia Rabishu. Teia is the quintessential SJW, a tranny, for all intents and purposes, who had absolutely no problems telling you she was a tranny, who had no problems admitting that the administration of MTG Salvation had a very liberal bias, living in her little fantasy world, claiming that the history or the future has a liberal slant, reality has a liberal slant, is correct because it just is, when there's nothing really to support such a claim. Teia Rabishu was made a moderator of the Water Cooler Talk subsection on Sally several years ago, a move that caused a lot of people, including former moderators of the forums and longtime patrons, longtime contributors such as myself and said moderators, to question the judgment. And in the end, we were told, well, it's already done, shut up. And for 7 years, Teia was a moderator. And Teia wants to play it off as if she didn't want to write this piece, but the truth of the matter is that Teia loved rolling around in the mud. And Teia's arguments 9 times out of 10 were the usual tripe that were easily put down when put under a microscope. Sometimes you didn't even need the microscope to make her look like an idiot. But Teia loved to do it, and when she was pushed against a corner, she would always tell you that you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, a racist. If you were right of Stalin, you were part of the alt-right, you were part of the conservative movement, even if that was not true. To Teia, it was, and that was the problem. This article was no different than what we have come to expect. It was tripe. It was a borderline call to violence against some people who she disagreed with, as much as she wants to say that it wasn't. Reading over the entire thing, shooting Nazis in New York. I mean, you don't say stuff like that unless there is a specific reason for it. She says that she was forced to write this. How? Was a gun held to her head? If she felt so strongly that this was a bad idea, why didn't she say, I won't be a moderator anymore? I've actually put myself out in that way multiple times, saying, no, this is unacceptable, and I'm willing to give up my position to protest this decision. 9 times out of 10, the people who tell you to do something like this back off when they realize you're not going to be a willing participant. But Teia wrote it anyways. Why? I said before that a lot of moderators on forums and such are low self-esteem individuals, that they have no power in real life. And especially when it comes to a transgender person, the one thing they feel they should have control over, their body, they still don't have that. And so they gravitate to moderating forums where they have some semblance of power, and they can use that power however they want. Teia was no different. And it really showed with my spat with Teia when calling her out on her BS, she refused to back down because she was the one with the wrench, so to speak. Now, that's not to say that Teia didn't make good points sometimes. I gave her credit where credit was due, but she was placed in a position of power where she should not have been. And there were a lot of people who liked Teia who said the exact same thing. So here we are, 7 years later? Teia's no longer a moderator, and she claims it's because of this. She claims it's because the administrators of Sally lied to Curse, and quite frankly, I could go either way on that. I know the administration of Sally. They are low self-esteem individuals just like Teia. They are passive-aggressive in every way, shape, and form until they're called out, and then they say, you're the passive-aggressive individual for calling them out. I dealt with that with several of the admins. Is it possible that Teia didn't want to write this? Absolutely, and I will grant her that. I will grant that maybe she really didn't want to, but if she really didn't want to, then the obvious decision was not to write it and to say, I'm no longer going to be part of this community if you're going to force me to. Maybe I'm being a little hard on Teia because of my history with her. Grant that. I'll gladly grant that. But at the same time, if she really didn't want to write it, a gun wasn't held to her head. She wasn't forced to. She made the conscious and the conscious effort to write this. And now, apparently there's backlash over it from people higher up in the food chain, and she's upset about it. Well, tough shit.